Hello everyone, welcome to another interesting and informative session of the Analyst brought to you by Vajiram and Ravi. In today's session, we will discuss 9 important articles as featured in the Hindu and Indian Express for your comprehensive understanding of the current affairs. The 5 main articles are as follows. In the first topic, we will read about the issues being faced by India en route to become a global manufacturing hub. Then in the second topic, we will study in detail about the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016. Followed by the third article, where we will try to understand what is nitrogen fixation and the related new discovery. Then in the fourth article, we will try to understand about the disputed border areas which India shares with Nepal. And finally, in the fifth article, we will read about a constitutional body called as National Commission on Backward Classes. Towards the end, there will be news snippets especially curated to help you excel in the upcoming prelims examination, so stay tuned. As per the World's Integrated Trade Solutions data, India's export from labor-intensive sectors such as textile, leather, gems and jewelry and marine products are seeing a sharp decline, thus ultimately hampering the idea of India to become a global manufacturing hub, which forms an important component of your GS3 paper under the larger theme of growth and development. Currently, our country is the 5th largest economy in the world in the terms of nominal GDP and 3rd largest economy in the world in the terms of purchasing power parity. However, if we want to achieve the ambitious target to become the 3rd largest economy in the world by the year of 2027, there stands 2 important challenges for us. The first is to increase the demand of Indian products outside the country, as well as by increasing the capability of our manufacturing sector to actually solve the issue of rising unemployment. Now, what are the findings of the report as featured in the newspaper? As per the Global Trade and Research Initiative Report 2023, when it comes to the total export of our country from the labor-intensive sectors, our share has actually declined by 12% in last 7 years. Now keep this in mind that our total export has not actually declined. Rather, it has actually been increasing in the last few years. However, the export from the labor-intensive sector has actually declined, and the overall export has actually jumped by 44% in the same duration. So to understand this changing dynamics of export and imports, let's try to take industry-specific examples. So if we talk about the textile industry, our total export in the year of financial year 2023 stood at $14.5 billion. In comparison to Bangladesh's $43.8 billion, Vietnam's $81 billion of textile exports and China's staggering $114 billion. In the same time period, while our country experienced the increase in the textile export of 4.6%, that share of increase for Bangladesh was 69% and for Vietnam was 81% increase respectively. Thus, if we look at the textile exports, the share of our country's cumulative increase or the cumulative percentage growth, it was around 11% in 2000, 34% in 2013 and 36% in 2023. Thus, in the last 10 years, the total world textile export has while risen by 11.4%, it stands only at a 6.2% increase for our country. At the same time, if we will look at the China's cumulative growth increase, it is staggering from 67% to 225 and to 221. Are we faring in other industries? Is their problem exist only with the textile industry? No. Even in the other industries, if we look at the electronic goods, even though our export has increased by 288% in the time period of 2018 to 24, our imports has also increased by 61%. Similarly, in petroleum products, our exports has actually increased by 127%, but at the same time, our imports has also increased by 65%. On the other hand, in your jewelry sector, our exports has actually declined by 20%. Thus, India's overall good export has actually surged by 44% to $433 billion in fiscal year of 2024 in comparison to $300 billion in fiscal year of 2018. But our import has risen much more by 46% and it has increased up to $677 billion. Which ultimately means that we are importing much more than we are earning from our export, thus ultimately leading to the negative balance of payment. So what are the causes for our such poor performance in the particular sector when it comes to exports? The major cause is the challenges which we are facing in our manufacturing sector. And this challenge, the first issue which arises, that is the supply chain disruptions which has occurred, specifically in the context of the geopolitical tension arising from Russia-Ukraine war and the turbulence which has been caused recently in the Red Sea region because of the attack by Houthi rebels. Thus, it has ultimately led to increase in the cost of certain essential import such as the import of petroleum, where as per the report, India is more than 80% reliant on our oil needs. So why this is such a major issue? Because such increasing cost of essential product, it increases the cost of import and ultimately leads to the issue of imported inflation. What is imported inflation? Let's say that you are as a kid residing in Himachal Pradesh and you really love the toys which are made in the state of Rajasthan. Now, to transport these toys from Rajasthan to Himachal Pradesh, normally let's say a truck is particularly used and that truck consumes, let's say, 10 liter of petrol, for which the cost is 100 rupees. I know this is far away from the reality, but let's assume. Now, let's say that if the petroleum products prices are increasing because of this geopolitical tension which is taking place, it is obvious that the cost of this travel will also increase. So, let's say now it has become 110 rupees. So, ultimately, this cost of transportation of goods will also be included in the final MRP of this toy. Thus, the toy will become expensive. Now your parents will say that no, the toys has become expensive, do not buy them now. We will purchase them on some particular occasion of Holi and Diwali. Thus, the demand for these toys has obviously declined because of the rise in the prices. And as per the report, this issue which has been taking place in the Red Sea, that has led to increase in the container ship cost by 2 to 3 times. Thus ultimately contributing to 0.7% of global inflation. At the same time, keep this in mind that now if we cannot go through the Red Sea route, if I want to export the toys from Himachal Pradesh to the region of Europe and I cannot take this Red Sea route, what I can do is I can diverge my ship from the route of Suez Canal. But that will also lead to increase in the cost by 5 to 6 times. Thus, the products of India has actually become expensive because of these supply chain disruptions. Then further, we are mired because of the poor infrastructure which exists in our country. Because as per the Logistic Performance Index, India ranked 44th, and the total cost of logistic, that is taking one product from one end to another, that is 14% in our country, and if we compare it to China, it is only 6 to 7% there. At the same time, it reflects in the global quality infrastructure index, where our quality of infrastructure is ranked 10th. And keep this in mind that we are the third largest economy in the world. At the same time, there is persisting issue of digital divide. So why the large scale manufacturing does not take place in India? Why manufacturing sector only contributes to 14% of our GDP currently? The major reason for that in the recent years has been the increasing digital divide, which you guys can see that the houses which had access to internet in rural areas were 15%, while that was 42% in the urban household. Similarly, the broadband internet penetration in India stood as 51% as the national average, while in the rural areas this internet penetration stood at a meager 29%. Thus ultimately translating in India's abysmal ranking of 100 by the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs UNDESA in the assessment of the measure of the e-government performances. Because of this issue, a large scale of rural area is not integrated into our manufacturing capacity, and thus there is only a small scale manufacturing which is ultimately concentrated in few particular industrialized regions. Then, even though if there is infrastructure, for example, the government is actually investing a lot in capital investment through under its, let's say, Gati Shakti program, even though we are trying to improve our infrastructure and reduce the logistic cost, such as let's say we are creating dedicated freight corridors, another reason why we are not able to produce world quality cheap product is because of the high unskilled labor force which exists in our country. Thus, we are unable to meet the demands which are rising from the Industry 4.0, which is majorly dependent upon the technology upgradation. For example, if you guys can see here, the percentage of skilled labor force in our country is a meager 21% in comparison to Bangladesh 26. Even we are lower than Pakistan, Myanmar, Sri Lanka and Nepal. Further, there exist challenges in the sunrise sectors. What are the sunrise sectors? Sunrise sectors are the emerging sectors such as your pharmaceuticals, electronic vehicles, renewable energy, in which our neighboring countries and competitors such as Bangladesh and Vietnam are actually faring really well. But sunrise sector in our countries are mired with the issues of high initial capital cost and the low technological capability to actually upscale our manufacturing capability. Further, when it comes to the expenditure on research and development for production of innovative products that can actually attract the global interest, our expenditure as a total stands abysmally low. If you guys will see here in the graph, the India's gross expenditure on R&D is below 0.7% of GDP. Further, India holds a small portion of intellectual property rights. So let's understand that India is considered as the pharmacy of the world because we are the largest manufacturer of the generic medicine. Now, if I want to produce a particular generic medicine and I do not hold the intellectual property rights for that, then I will need to purchase it from the original patent holder, let's say USA and China. It is obvious that this cost of purchasing the IP will also be reflected in the final price of the medicine, and thus the medicine which is being produced by India, the cost of that will increase. On the other hand, that cost is low for medicines which are being produced in large scale by China, USA, which hold these patent rights. And that is also reflected in our poor ranking as per the International IP Index report. Further, we are facing severe challenges from our competitors such as Bangladesh and Vietnam as per the report, who have got the large traction of market share because of the existing free trade agreements which they have signed, as well as their status of being a least developed country, which actually gets them 10 to 15% concession on import duty, thus making their products cheap. Further, there is issues which are being faced by our micro, small and medium sector. The MSME sector, which contributes to the 30% of our GDP and employs 50% of our workforce. What are the challenges which are being faced by the MSME sector? So let's first say that there is rising issue of inflation. Now, because of this rising issue of inflation in our economy, it is obvious that the prices of raw material will increase. At the same time, let's say that earlier I used to earn 10,000 rupees as my salary, and the cost of feeding my whole family was just 4,000. So this salary was very well good for me. But now, because of the inflation, the cost of food has increased, and now this feeding cost has increased up to 8,000 rupees. So it is obvious that now I will demand for higher salary, because I will not be able to sustain in this previous salary income. Thus, because of the rising cost of raw material and labor, ultimately the cost of final product has also increased. And as per the market dynamics, if the cost of product has increased, it is obvious that its demand will decline. And now when the demand is declining, what this MSME can do is that to float, it can actually take credit from formal institutions. But that is another issue which this MSMEs faces, where they do not have favorable access to the formal credit. Thus, mired by all these institutions, either these MSMEs are shutting off, especially in the textile sector, or they are leading to large-scale layoffs. Now, when the large-scale layoffs will happen, obviously the problem of unemployment and poverty will be compounded, and thus the propensity to consume will further decline, and thus they will create a chain of cyclical unemployment and high inflation in the economy. Thus, to deal with these several challenges, the government has taken several steps. First of them being creation of mega investment textile parks, which the government has launched to integrate small scale textile industries and create a chain where there can be a large scale investment. Further, the government has launched the remission on duties and taxes on export products, and it has extended this ultimately to 18 products, thus trying to reduce the cost of Indian products in international markets. Further, the government has launched the production linked incentive scheme. Under, the government is trying to boost the domestic manufacturing by providing incentives for almost 5 to 6 years, and it will also lead to the additional production turnover, additional employment of obviously more than 10 to 15 lakhs. It will help the Indian companies to emerge as global champions. Then the government is also envisaging to sign free trade agreements, because recently we signed a free trade agreement with United Arab Emirates in the year of 2022, and as per the report, it has actually helped the gem and jewelry section of our country, where the exports has actually increased to 40% with UAE. Further, to increase the demand of our product, it is very important to ensure that the quality of our product significantly increases. And for that purpose, the government has launched zero defect and zero effect policy. In this direction, we are also trying to skill our future labor under Kaushal Vikas Yojana 4.0, especially keeping the needs of Industry 4.0 in our mind, under which 14 million candidates have been trained and 11 million has been trained under the craftsman training scheme. Also, you guys can see the countries here with which India is trying FTAs in the future, specifically with the European Union. And finally, the government has also launched the Mudra Yojana to ensure credit facilities to this MSME sector, which is in the dire need of that. Further, we also need to further put impetus on the scaling of the larger population. Also, we need to ensure that we invest more in the sunrise sector, such as electronic vehicle, renewable energy. We can also tweak our FDI policy to ensure knowledge sharing formula in that. And further, as the government has envisaged in the budget 2023, we can try for cluster development program to create a district specialized in producing a particular product. With all these suggestions in your mind, try to practice this question and comment your answer in the comment box. We move forward to the next news. As per the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, the National Company Law Tribunal has achieved a significant 43% increase in the debt resolution, jumping from 189 cases in 2022 to 270 cases in 2023. Which means that 270 cases of debt has actually been resolved under this IBC code of 2016 in the year of 2023. This issue of insolvency and bankruptcy forms an important component of your GS3 paper under the larger theme of the issues related to the Indian economy and the interventions taken by the government. So let's first try to understand what do we mean by these two terms of insolvency and bankruptcy. Let's say that I am a particular person A who has taken the loan from a bank called T, and I am unable to pay either the interest or the principal amount back to the bank. Thus, if I am unable to do so for the period of next 90 days or 3 months, I will be declared as a non-performing asset. Thus, according to the bank, I have become an insolvent person. But at the same time, if I do not have the capability to return the interest or principal amount at all, and I am completely giving up on the idea of returning, then I will be declared as a bankrupt by the bank. Now, if I have taken a loan from the bank, I was actually used to be an asset for the bank because I was paying interest to it. The bank was using that interest to generate further income. But now if I am unable to pay the interest or principal amount, I will have converted into a liability for the bank. Because now that particular income has been in the kind of a hole and no further income can be generated from that particular income. Thus, the money multiplier effect in the economy has actually diminished. Because of these reasons, there was high rising issue of the non-performing assets in the bank, specifically from the years of 2009, as you guys can see on the graph. Now, if I am unable to return the money to the bank, the maximum the bank could do at that time was to approach the courts. The courts which were already dealing with the issue of high pendency, as can be seen from the table. Thus, to effectively deal with this issue, the Government of India came with the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code of 2016, where it provided for a time-bound resolution for debt restructuring process, and the government provided that such debt restructuring will be available to both an individual as well as a corporate person or any corporate company. What is a corporate person as per the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code? It is basically a company which is defined under the Companies Act of 2013 or limited liability partnership which has been defined under the Act of 2008, or any other person who has been incorporated with limited liability under any law. Keep this in mind that it does not include any financial service provider. Now, earlier the minimum income which used to come under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, it used to be 1 lakh rupees, but now it has been increased to 1 crore rupees. Now, this Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code is regulated by the provision of Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So we now will try to understand that how is the provisions of this IBC and how does the debt restructuring actually takes place. So let's say if there is a company or any individual, if they want to initiate this process of debt restructuring which they have given to the debtor, then they need to approach to the National Company Law Tribunal, which either can approve that appeal or decline that appeal. It has to do so within the period of 14 days. After that, the creditors, which can be a financial creditor or an operational creditor, they can initiate the process of debt restructuring. What is the difference between the financial creditor and operational creditor? Financial creditor is the person who has a secured financial credit, or a person who has offered a kind of a amount particularly to that given person. An operational creditor can be a person who is either a workman whose dues has been due for the period of 24 months, or the wages has not been provided to them, or they were in the part of that debt which had been taken and they are related to that and thus has suffered some kind of loss, right? To understand this, let's say that there was a housing project which was taking place, and I as a person has bought a flat in this particular apartment. Now the apartment is not being constructed or finalized, and the person who has taken the money from me is saying, I'm sorry, I'm unable to create the apartment. So I will fall in the category of a financial creditor. Now there were certain laborers, engineers who were working in these projects whose dues has also been installed because that person has actually defaulted. So they will fall in the category of operational creditor. Both of them can initiate the process, but there lies a waterfall mechanism. Under the waterfall mechanism, the first priority of returning the money is given to the financial creditor and then followed to the operational creditor. Now, when the process is being initiated, here will come in an insolvency professional, a person who has knowledge related to these kind of financial issues, and that person is registered under the insolvency professional agency. At the same time, he will incur the financial information from the information utilities, and these are the people who have kind of knowledge or legal knowledge according to the financial issues which has taken place, and they will help these insolvency professionals. Now this insolvency professional will help in the formation of the credit committee, where if the 66% of the people will say that yes, this restructuring plan which is being offered to us, we completely agree to that, then the implementation of the plan will occur to recover the dues. However, if the 66% or 2/3 of the people, any less than that, say that no, we do not want such restructuring process, then the liquidation of the asset or haircut will take place. Haircut basically means that, let's say if I had given like I had bought the flat for 80 lakh rupees, it is obvious that the complete amount cannot be restored to me, so I will take a haircut that okay, instead of 80 lakhs at least give me 50 lakh rupees. That is called as a haircut. Now these insolvency professionals, insolvency professional agencies or information utilities, all of them are governed by the IBBI or Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India. Finally, the completion of the process shall be take place in the stipulated time period, which is of 180 days. And if there is any such extension, it has to be of maximum of 90 days. There lies two adjudicating authorities to all this process which is taking place. First is the National Company Law Tribunal, obviously which will deal with the companies, and the Debt Restructuring Tribunal which will deal with the individuals, right? If the individuals has been defaulted or individuals are there as the creditors. Now, as per the finding of the report, this debt restructuring process has significantly increased because of the new provisions which has been added by the government. First of them is the fast track corporate insolvency resolution process or FIRP, which has been specifically launched for the small size and unlisted companies, for example the startups, where if the minimum default is below 1 crore, then such FIRP will be initiated, and this shall be completed within the process of 90 days. Also, because the limit was set up to be 1 crore, a large section of MSME was actually being excluded, and for them a pre-packaged insolvency resolution process will be initiated for these MSMEs if the case is above 10 lakh and up to 1 crore. Here the debtor in possession model will take place, whereby a resolution arrangement is agreed upon between the distressed corporate debtor and the lender even before approaching the National Company Law Tribunal. So it is just like you can say that on the idea of Lok Adalat, it is kind of a mediation which takes place between the corporate debtor and the lender, and that is called as a pre-packaged insolvency resolution. It also provides for Swiss challenge. What is Swiss challenge? So let's say that the government is going to say that this is a particular project, the building which was being created. Now the person who was creating this building has defaulted. So we are selling this building. Now there will be original bidders who will present their bids, and at the same time the auctioneer will also look for the alternative bids. So by this process, the person who will offer the maximum amount for that apartment, that person will be selected. That is called as a Swiss challenge, which is provided under pre-packaged insolvency. And this process has to be completed within the stipulated time period of 120 days. Now, as per the report, there has been several positive results, where there has been 43% increase in the resolution of the debts. At the same time, 27,000 applications which were worth 10 lakh crore rupees that has been withdrawn. As per the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, the National Company Law Tribunal has also applied a sandbox approach when it comes to real estate, where even if we talk about the real estate, there can be different types of default which has taken place. So each one of them will deal in a specific manner, and one size fits approach will not be followed. Further, there is a pre-packaged insolvency which has worked wonders, where there is already an agreement between debtor and creditor before going into the formal bankruptcy. Also, the government has created a bad bank called as National Asset Reconstruction Company Limited, where these bad banks will actually buy this project such as this apartment. It will give the money to all the people who are suffering, and after that this particular apartment will either be utilized for some larger purpose, or this bad bank will ensure that it gets a hefty amount for that project. Then even after all these measures which has been taken, there lies several leukemas. First of which is that if we look at the average days which has been taken for the closure of this insolvency processes, that is much more than the actual time which was envisaged. Also, if we look at the debt recovery in the total, the admitted cases has been more than 6,80,000, but the realized cases has been only a meager share of 33 to 40% only. Thus, there are still certain reforms which shall be taken, and as suggested by the report, there shall be inclusion of a mediation process in the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Court, and India shall also join UN CITRAL, which actually provides for cross-border insolvency, right? So, India is currently not part of UN CITRAL. Now, on the basis of this information, try to solve this particular question. You can comment your answer in the comment box as well, or you can just take out a paper, try to write in a very precise format and within the time duration. We move forward to the next news. Discovery of a new organelle UCYNA, which is capable of nitrogen fixation, actually offers a various potential benefits in the field of agriculture. And this new discovery of nitrogen fixation by UCYNA actually forms an important component of your GS3 paper under the theme of biotechnology and the discoveries which can aid the farmers. So let's first try to understand what is the process of nitrogen fixation. Well, nitrogen in its atmospheric condition found as a gas is actually has the highest share of gas in the atmosphere, up to 78%. But just imagine the bad luck of a plant that it cannot process this atmospheric nitrogen. Now, why the plants actually need atmospheric nitrogen at all? Because this nitrogen is actually the formation compound of chlorophyll. Chlorophyll, which is actually essential for plants to perform the process of photosynthesis, under which this plant uses the sunlight to convert carbon dioxide into sugar, and thus ultimately leading to the nutrition of plants. However, if the plant is unable to use this atmospheric nitrogen, then how they survive and create these chlorophyll? They do so by being in the symbiotic relationship with bacteria and archaea, who help these plants to convert nitrogen into the form of ammonia. So if you guys can see here in the picture, there is this atmospheric nitrogen gas, which plant is obviously lack the system to utilize it. Thus, plants uses the nitrogen fixing bacteria in which they gets into a symbiotic relationship, and this conversion of atmospheric nitrogen into the inorganic nitrates and ammonium ions is actually called as disotrophy. Now, who are those nitrogen fixing bacteria? There is Klebsiella, Azospirillum, Rhizobium, Azotobacter, Frankia and Cyanobacteria. Now, this process of converting nitrogen into the inorganic nitrate and ammonium nitrates, there are certain plants which falls in the category of legumes, which are basically in the family of Fabaceae, which actually bears the nitrogen fixing bacteria in their root nodules. Which are these nitrogen fixing plants? There is your alfalfa, there is your soybean, clover, peanuts, as well as your lupinas, chickpea, etc. And all these plants actually helps in the fixation of nitrogen. This fixation of nitrogen takes place in several stages, such as in the first stage of nitrification, this ammonia is actually converted into the nitrates by the bacteria which are used by the plants for the process of photosynthesis. Then comes your ammonification, where after the death of plants and animals, the nitrogen which is present in the organic matter, that is released back into the soil by the decomposers. And the third stage comprises of the denitrification, where the conversion of nitrates take place back into the atmospheric nitrogen, and this takes place, remember this, that in the absence of oxygen. So the stages are nitrification, ammonification, followed by the denitrification, and the cycle continues, which forms the nitrogen cycle, where as we can see that the nitrogen in the atmosphere, it will be fixed by the nitrogen bacteria in the root nodules, the plants which we have already discussed, such as alfalfa. Finally, there will be ammonification and nitrification. The nitrification will ultimately lead to the assimilation of plants of this NO3. And finally, if it will take place back, that will be the denitrification. Here, the bacteria, they will decompose these organic matter and the fossil fuels, and that will also lead to the process of ammonification. So this is the nitrogen cycle. Now, what is the recent discovery which is associated with this nitrogen fixation? As per the recent discovery, there is a nitroplast or UCYNA, which is a nitrogen fixing cyanobacteria found in marine algae. So till now, there was only mitochondria and chloroplast, the two earlier known instances of organelle formation. What is this organelle which we are associating with this nitroplast? Organelles are basically the subcellular structure which performs some specific functions. For example, there is your organelle of nuclei which holds your genetic information, or there is mitochondria, which is also an organelle which actually leads to the releasing of chemical energy. Thus, it is considered as the powerhouse of the cell. Similarly, there has been found a new organelle called as nitroplast, right? Now, what is endosymbiosis? Endosymbiosis is basically when one symbiotic partner lives within the second symbiotic partner who is considered as the host. The nitroplast evolution as an organelle or a component which will perform a specific function is very recent, about 100 to 100 million years only, right? Now, this discovery has been done by asserting on certain parameters. The first was that this integration of organelle into the host cell which has taken place, the host cell being the marine algae. Then there has been the importing of protein from the host by this nitroplast, and finally leading to the host cell division. This latest discovery of nitroplast is actually independent of nitrogen fixing organelles, can spur several levels of biotechnical applications. What are they which can actually lead to their effective use in agriculture? The first is that it can curb the harmful side effects of industrial ammonia which is produced through this Haber-Bosch process which you guys can see on the screen. This conversion of atmospheric nitrogen and use of hydrogen from the natural gas and leading to the production of ammonia, which has led to the large scale use of fertilizers in the plants, has actually led to various kind of issues in our agricultural sector. Also, this Haber-Bosch process, according to the report, is responsible for the production of 1.4% of greenhouse gases, specifically the carbon dioxide. Thus, with the use of this natural nitrogen fixing bacteria, if we can harness this technology, it will ultimately lead to the reduction of this harmful side effects of the industrial ammonia. At the same time, because very small amount of genomes is required to lead to the multiplication of this UCNA, we can lead to the large scale production. And we can also use it as a biotechnology where we can incorporate this bacteria and lead to the creation in the plants a natural process of nitrogen fixation in the future. And with this capability, we will not require the use of these nitrogen based fertilizers at all. Just imagine the future implications of that, right? We do not need to import the urea in the future. We will not need to produce this industrial ammonia from Haber-Bosch process. So the greenhouse gas production will decline as well. But keep this in mind that all these are just theories in our mind currently, and there is a lot to be discovered and implemented in the future. On the basis of this information, please try to solve this previous year prelims question. On the basis of memory, do not pause the video and go back, and we move forward to the next video. The Nepal government has recently released a new 100 rupees currency note, where it has depicted the country's map with the disputed areas of Lipu Lake, Limpiadhura and Kalapani, which are the disputed border areas with our country. To which our external affairs ministers has sharply responded and said that any such unilateral changes will not affect the ground reality. So in this particular session, we'll try to understand what are these disputed areas with Nepal, which forms an important component of your prelims paper under the theme of important regions which has been in the news. First, let's try to understand what is the historical context of these disputed areas between India and Nepal. So there is a very famous American saying that if there is two fishes in the pond which are fighting, there is a possibility that a Britishers has just passed by. And that is also applicable in this particular case because this dispute traces its root from the Sigoli Treaty of 1816. Which was signed after the Anglo-Nepalese War of 1814 to 1816. Under which the Britishers, they occupied certain strategic regions such as Sikkim, Darjeeling as well as Garhwal and Kamau region of Uttarakhand. Also, the Nepal after that became a protectorate state of British East India Company and a resident was appointed there. At the same time, it also led to the recruitment of Gurkha in the British Indian Army, where they played a very important role in the curbing down of the revolt of 1857. However, coming back to this issue of demarcation of borders, the treaty decided that the western border will be marked by the Kali River and the eastern border will be marked by the Mechi River. The Article 5 explicitly stated that the king of the Nepal shall give up the claim on the territory west of the river Kali. So let's try to understand what is this Kali River. Kali River is also called as Sharda River. It originated from the Himalayan regions and descends from the Limpiadhura Pass. Finally, when it starts entering little bit into the plain, there are two confluences which comes like this, and they meet at one place called as Gunja. And in that Gunja, after that, they are called as Kali River. Now, this became the issue of dispute, where the Nepal says that the reason from the west of this river, which forms the boundary, it shall be traced back to the origin of this river, from where it is originating. So now which confluence to be taken as the original source of the river? That will become the first dispute. India says that no, the Kali river is known from this region onwards, from the Limpiadhura. Thus, the whole region of Limpiadhura, Lipu Lake, Kalapani, all that falls as the our territory. Now, let's try to understand this dispute. So, first there was a Britishers' debacle, where the Britishers first they said in their original map they actually showed that this particular region of Lipu Lake and Kalapani falls in Nepal's territory, because they took this river Kali as the western boundary. However, then they realized that it has led to the loss of a strategic area, because it was a key reason for trade of tea with China at that time. Also, it had a religious significance, because this region falls en route to the Mansarovar Yatra, which is a very like a kind of a religious significance when it comes to the Hindu community. Then the Nepal has this stand that the east of the river shall be taken from the source of origin and not the confluence of the stream. Specifically, after the democracy was established in Nepal in 2008, it ultimately led to the democratic government accessing a lot of previous years' monarchies' data and documents, which made their kind of the revolt which they were doing to claim this area much more sharper. Because they said that this Kalapani region was actually offered to the Britishers by the monarchy to gain undue favors. And at the same time, the stationing of Indian Army during the Indo-Chinese War of 1962, from when onwards we have got our army in this particular region, that was done to ensure that China does not get involved in this particular region. Now, recently, the Nepal has further increased its claim on these regions, and there is rising issue of China's involvement in this particular case. Now, India needs to take stringent steps to ensure, because we are already facing a two-front face-off between Pakistan and China in the region of Ladakh. We cannot afford the same thing in this important tri-junction. Thus, we need to ensure that we have a cordial relation with Nepal, and any such dispute shall be solved by mediation and discussions. With these suggestions, we move forward to the next news. Absence of socio-economic data related to the other backward classes has actually created impediment in the functioning of the National Commission for Backward Classes. Thus, in this particular session, we are going to be a very prelims oriented, where we will try to understand the different provisions of this constitutional body, that is National Commission for Backward Classes, which forms an important component of your prelims paper under the theme of constitutional bodies. Well, the history of origin of NCBC actually lies with the Indra Sahni judgment of 1992. Which actually directed the central government to create a statutory body which shall be there to hear to the various complaints arising from this other backward class. Thus, in the year of 1993, NCBC was first created as a statutory body. However, with the rising significance of backward classes and various complaints and issues revolving around them, it was finally given a constitutional status by the 102nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 2018, where a new article was inserted, that was Article 338B. Currently, the NCBC comprises of 5 members, which are a chairperson, a vice chairperson, and 3 other members who are appointed by the president under his warrant of hand and seal. Also, this NCBC presents an annual report to the President, which is laid down in the front of the both of the houses of the Parliament. Now, this National Commission for Backward Classes has all the powers to civil courts, where the National Commission for Backward Classes can actually procure any kind of the document or call any other person for investigation or inquiry. Now, very recently, the Rohini Commission has been in the news because of the issue of subcategorization of OBC, which is being done to identify the quantum of benefits or the idea of the creamy layer, which was introduced under the Indra Sahni judgment, also called as Mandal judgment of 1992. Keep this information very dear to you for the upcoming prelims examination, and we move forward to the next news segment. In this particular segment, we are going to cover some very important news which will be very relevant for you for the upcoming prelims examination and can help you in eliminating some important statements. The first deals about the onion production in India. Why it has been in the news? Because very recently the government has lifted the export curb which it has put on the onion, specifically in the times of elections. However, the complete liftoff has not been done because it has restrained the free flow of the outbound shipment by keeping a minimum export price of $550 and per ton and 40% of export duty. Now, when it comes to onion production in our country, keep this in mind that India is the second largest producer of the onion. And onion is grown in various seasons of Kharif from June to July, from Rabi December to January, as well as in the in-between of the Zayed season as well. If we talk about the state-wise production, then Maharashtra is the largest producer of onion in our country, having 40% of the share, followed by the second one, that is Madhya Pradesh, with 15% share. And if we look at the major export destination of onion in our country, our largest export destination is Bangladesh, followed by Malaysia, and then there are several other countries such as UAE, Sri Lanka, Saudi Arabia, etc. Now we move forward to the next news where we'll talk about Koleru Lake. Koleru Lake has been in the news because there was this very vibrant picture where this Ramsar site has completely dried in the wake of the intense heat waves. Keep this in mind that Koleru Lake is one of the largest freshwater lake, and it is in the state of Andhra Pradesh, as you guys can see here on the map, being one of the important Ramsar site which was declared in the year of 2002. Now, Koleru Lake is located between the deltas of two important rivers, and that is Krishna and Godavari. And it is fed by seasonal rivers of Budameru and Tamileru. Then it acts as a hotspot for the bird migratory route because it falls part of the Central Asian Flyway. Also, some other important Ramsar site has been shown to you in the map, so please pay a little bit of attention there as well. And try to solve this previous year prelims question, where it talks about the Koleru Lake and it says that it is at the confluence of Musi and Krishna. However, as we have seen that it is actually located between the delta of Godavari and Krishna, and it is fed by seasonal rivers only. Thus, we can very clearly eliminate the third option, which gives us the answer directly, which means that the Harike wetland actually lies on the confluence of Beas and Satluj. Thus, now the task for the day is for you guys to find out that the Keoladeo National Park lies on the confluence of which rivers. We move forward to the next news, where we will talk about the H5N1 outbreak, which is actually rampaging the cattle in USA, specifically in the regions of Texas. What is H5N1? H5N1 is basically the avian influenza, which is caused by the pathogenic virus, and it originated from the virus outbreak in China in the year of 1986. The first outbreak of this avian influenza was experienced in our country back in 2015, and very recently several states such as Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, Gujarat as well had actually experienced this H5N1 outbreak. Keep this in mind that this avian influenza significantly impacts the mammalian species, as can be seen as it has spread among the cattle in USA. Also, there was this news of reverse spillover events. What is reverse spillover events? As per the news, because the large number of cattle which are being affected, that actually affects back the avians as well. Thus, spreading of the disease take place in a very large numbers, which can eventually impact the humans as well. Thus, the articles highlight for the need of a global pandemic treaty which shall be based on the concept of One Health. Also, we have reached to the last news of our day, which is very interesting as it talks about Boeing Starliner, which has been in the news. What is Boeing Starliner? Boeing Starliner is basically a spacecraft which will be used to carry 2 astronauts to the International Space Station, which is located in the lower Earth orbit. And if the Boeing Starliner will become a success, it will make USA the first country in the world to have 2 spacecrafts to launch astronauts to the space. The first one being the Dragon capsule of a private company, SpaceX. So is the Boeing's Starliner as well. And this Boeing Starliner is actually a spacecraft, so that will work in the space, and it will be taken up to the space by the rocket, and that is Atlas V. Now in 2011, NASA actually shut down its space shuttle program, and then it kind of lended this taking of astronauts to the International Space Station activity to the private players such as SpaceX or Boeing, and that was awarded in the year of 2014. However, the Dragon capsule had started functioning from the year of 2020 only, so till 2020 there was only one spacecraft which can actually take the astronauts to the International Space Station, and that was Soyuz rocket of Russia. So keep these important facts in your mind, and with this we have reached to the end of our discussion. Do not forget to attempt the questions at the end of the video and test your knowledge. We will meet in a very interesting discussion very soon. Till then, all the very best for your preparation guys, and thank you.